My daughter Tawney was in church probably the first day of her life. Went to all the things as a church kid. Terry and I raised her in the church. She loved the arts. She liked to dance, do all kinds of things. She always had friends around her. As she moved into her later elementary years into junior high, competitiveness came out in her. She began to love sports, soccer, got into volleyball, moving into high school.
Tawney was a great kid. She was involved in youth ministry. She was at every event. She was involved. She was kind. We had a lot of fun. She had a lot of fun.
During that time, she was making steps towards Christ. She even got baptized when she was like 6 or 7. But as parents, we knew that was her doing what she thought she was supposed to do.
So Tawney, growing up in a Christian home and a great church, learning all the right things, but I watched throughout the course of kind of a life as a teenager, just the struggle of rebellion, deceptiveness, all of those things that were evident.
As she moved into high school, a new side of her arose, a secret side, a deceptive side. She kind of had two lives, the life she led at home and at church and the life she led at school with her friends.
Growing up, teenage years, I think very much the evidence of a Christian home, understanding the right things to do and say and be and just be a part of that, but not necessarily in a way that was personal to her.
She began to idolize relationships. She got involved with boys that she probably knew we wouldn't approve of. That became more apparent as she fell into discipleship with some of the girls from church. I was a leader in my church at that time. I stepped down from all those activities. We began devoting a tremendous amount of time to her, more or less getting back involved in her life. She put on the persona that she was a good little girl, that she was doing all the things that a Christian girl would do, and yet we found out that she was deceptive.
She didn't heed counsel very well. There were times when I remember John and I talking to her about some things, and she'd listen, but she didn't really want to change. She didn't want to obey the Lord in some areas in her life.
Tawney was very much idolizing relationships with boys in her teen years, very deceptive, and you could see how sin was ruling her life at that time. After getting saved, you now know that God is controlling her life, that she's wanting to do what would please Him more than anything else. When she came home from Masters, after graduating there, she was a totally different girl. Her faith was now hers. Often you could almost see her confronting her mom and dad with sin, not necessarily us with her. She had become mature. She knew what was expected of her by what Scripture would tell us.
The change I saw was as a young adult, and that was when I think coincided with her attending Masters and seeing the evidence of salvation in other young adults that didn't match who she said she was. And that at that point where God made that clear to her really is where I saw her faith change.
Her humility and her demeanor was different. There was something different about her. And like I said, the deception part, as much as we saw it, we didn't know the depth of it and what God had to bring her through to get her to the point of brokenness and ultimately salvation. But we got to see the fruit of it when she came back into our lives, that she was teachable and humble and wanted to honor the Lord in everything.
She became much more independent. She didn't need mom and dad to protect her anymore in her faith. She was willing to say no to the things she needed to say no to her now herself.
Tawney is very intentional. So everything she does, she thinks through, and she wants to honor the Lord in those things. And so her as a mom, she is no different. She thinks through, she's intentional. She wants to serve her husband She wants to serve the Lord, and she loves the church. And that has been modeled to her from her parents, and she has taken that to the next level.
It's funny because her mom and I joke at the way we raised her and the way she's raising her daughters. We're seeing her try to be probably more biblical in her raising of the kids than we were. That in essence represents a new life to us, that she's not following our pattern, the things we necessarily raised her on, but what she's learned from Scripture, a change in life.
Tawney was deceived and a deceiver, and became a pursuer of truth, and that is where life changed for her.
I'm very proud of my daughter. I know it's that nothing her mom and I have done. It's totally by the grace of God that she has turned out as godly of a woman as she has.